Today I took the most expensive running shoes on the market down to my local half marathon, but did they actually make me faster? This is the Adidas Pro Evo 2. It cost a whopping $500 or £450 here in the UK. And you know what's more crazy about this shoe is that you might only be able to wear it for the one marathon before it starts to fall apart basically. It's been dominating the podium of elite running. Sebastian Sawe, the winner of the London Marathon this year, wore this shoe to an impressive time of 2 hours and 2 minutes. But I wanted to test it out for myself to see how it would fare over the half marathon distance. So that's exactly what I did. And today I thought I would share with you my thoughts on this crazy expensive running shoe from Adidas. So the first thing I wanted to discuss is what makes this shoe so expensive. Now the first is the research and development that's gone into this shoe. Adidas have tested this with lots of elite athletes in the lab. There would probably been hundreds of different prototypes of this shoe, and that process is very, very expensive. So that's probably the first reason. The second is the foam of this shoe is something a little bit different to that we see in a typical super shoe on the market at the moment. The technical term is an uncompressed superficial EVA, which just means the way this midsole is made, it's almost blown up. So they take a small amount of EVA and they blow it up using a very high-tech process to form this midsole here, which is very, very difficult to do. Whereas something like a Pro 4, they can make much more on a mass market because the technology that goes into the midsole isn't so extreme. So as a result, the shoe has a Light Strike Pro Evo midsole, which is basically just a less dense version of what you find in the Pro 4. But it has the same, if not more, energy return than the more traditional super shoe foam. So yeah, you're gonna notice that underfoot, and I will talk about that a little bit when I go on to my first impressions. Another reason why it's so expensive is marketing. This is Adidas's most premium super shoe. It's worn by the elites. They've set the price point so that it reflects its sort of position in the market. If this was a £200 shoe, then it may not get the hype behind it. So I do think that £450 price tag comes down to marketing as well. And it also makes their other super shoe, the Pro 4, seem that somewhat cheaper at £220. And the final reason why this shoe is so expensive is because of the weight. Compared to your average super shoe, let's say the Pro 4, this is around 60 to 70 grams lighter. So in hand, the Pro 4 is already a really light running shoe at around 200 grams in my UK size 8. Whereas the Pro Evo 2 is 70 grams lighter, 138 grams. In hand, it is ridiculously light. So moving on to my first impressions, I ran the half marathon in them this morning, so I thought I'd share with you how they felt on foot. Before I go into that, I do just want to make clear that this shoe was sent to me by Adidas for the purpose of review. I'm going to be totally honest, at £450, I would have never brought these shoes myself. And I feel like for everyday runners and even runners at my ability, sort of in the sub-elite category, this is probably not a shoe that I'm going to be recommending purely based off that price point. But I also want to share with you how it felt on foot if we look past that price point. So the first thing I noticed was the weight. Obviously 138 grams is drastically lighter than anything I've ever raced in before, especially with such high stack height. So you've got 39 millimeters in the rear, only a 3mm drop, so you've still got a huge amount of stack height under the forefoot as well. It does have quite an aggressive rocker geometry, which is something that's a little bit different compared to the Pro Evo 1. And they've put 10% more foam into this shoe, but maintained that super lightweight that they had in the first one. The foam feels very different to that of the Pro 4, I would say. It's hard to explain, but it almost feels a little bit firmer. It's a lot less squishy underfoot, but the energy return is as good, if not better, than what I've experienced in the Pro 4. It's almost like a more direct energy return. So when your foot lands on the floor, the shoe doesn't mush and squish down like the Pro 4 does. It sort of, you hit the ground, you still get a nice sort of soft cushioned feel, but it's a little bit firmer and more direct when running in it. It's hard to explain, but maybe I can show the difference between the sort of compression. If I push down on the shoe here with all my force, obviously it gives a little bit, but not too much. Whereas if I do that with the Adidas Pro 4, as you can see, it's a lot more squishy underfoot. So yeah, you'll definitely notice if you try this shoe, it feels a little bit firmer. That's something to note. It's not going to be for everyone, but I found the faster you ran in this shoe, the quicker it felt, basically. This is not going to be a shoe that you want to do jogging in, and I'd even go as far to say as if you're not going to be running around 340 per kilometer or faster, then this shoe probably isn't going to work for you, because it's one of those shoes that you have to put quite a lot of energy into it in order for it to feel good. Now, the first downside I found to this shoe was actually the grip. The half marathon that I did this morning, the ground was a little bit damp and in some areas wet, and I noticed that I would lose a little bit of traction underfoot. This shoe has been designed to be super minimal, so the grip on the bottom is also minimal to save weight, but it just means if you've got wet conditions, then this shoe is definitely not going to be suitable, I would say, for race day. So that's obviously something to take into consideration. That is drastically different to the grip found on the Pro 4, which is a lot more sticky, and I've never had any issues in wet conditions. So that's probably the first and only downside really to my first experience in this shoe. I also noticed the drop in this shoe, 3mm, is very minimal, especially for a super shoe, but it does have this sort of aggressive rocker that encourages you up onto your forefoot. I personally land more midfoot, so I found like I was landing more on top of the foam rather than up onto my toes. So maybe if I was more of a forefoot runner, it would be a little bit more suited. But I found it was, yeah, a sort of interesting ride between being firm and cushioned at the same time, which is, yeah, one of the main differences between, say, the Evo lineup and the Pro 4 from Adidas that I've also been very fond of. In the race, I was doing a marathon pace tempo effort, so I wasn't going all out, so it's hard to tell, is this shoe the fastest shoe I've ever worn? It's hard to make that conclusion off obviously one run, but I would say based off the pace that I ran at, which was 3:23 per kilometer, which is my marathon pace, it felt very, very good, very smooth. According to some lab reports, up to 85% in terms of energy return from this midsole, and I definitely found that when I was out there running. It feels a very smooth and efficient shoe. It doesn't have that crazy bounciness that some super shoes have, but in terms of like ticking over, being super lightweight on foot, it certainly feels the creme de la creme of sort of efficiency. Would I say this shoe made the pace feel the easiest that 3:23 per kilometer has ever felt? Probably not, but then based off the training I've done this week, I wasn't necessarily expecting it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is for £450, I wasn't like blown away by this shoe in terms of, it wasn't like a league above anything I've ever tried before. It was kind of on par with the sort of top dogs in the super shoe game at the moment, which for me are the Puma Fast R3 and the Asics Metaspeed Edge Tokyo. Those three, I would say, including the Evo, are the fastest shoes that I've experienced. But I would say this shoe didn't necessarily shine as being, yeah, a complete dominant super shoe in comparison to those. So finally, some conclusions on the Evo Pro 2. Is this the fastest super shoe that I've ever worn? I think based off just the first half marathon race I've done in it, it's hard to say either way. I would be confident in saying it's definitely in the top 3 for me. It didn't, as I said, blow me away as being incredible compared to anything I've ever tried. I was very impressed with this shoe, but given that super high price point, I was maybe expecting a little bit more in terms of that feeling of being, yeah, the top dog, if you like. The next big question for me when sort of looking at this shoe versus, say, a traditional super shoe on the market at the moment, such as the Pro 4, is that money, that £230 difference between the shoes, justified? And I would say for somebody like myself, probably not. I would be just as comfortable racing a marathon in the Pro 4 as I would the Evo 2 in terms of how the shoes would perform. So I wouldn't necessarily go out there and spend an extra £230 just to get the Pro Evo 2 based off my first impressions. I feel like this shoe is going to be a lot more versatile for runners of all abilities, whereas the Evo is really going to be purely for the top runners out there in terms of sub-elite and elite runners. If you're somebody running 4 hours to the marathon, then you're gonna have a much better time in a Pro 4 than you would in the Evo 2. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the run out in it. I will do some more testing. It's definitely up there with the best super shoes I've ever tried, but is it the best by far? Definitely not. And would I spend £450 of my own money on it? Probably not. So that summarises my first impressions of the Pro Evo 2. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe. They've even got this like new feature on YouTube at the moment called Hype. So if you want to hype the video, go ahead. The Ben is Running merch is now live. If you want to check them out, then I'll leave a link down to the website. And thanks to everyone who's bought them so far. But until next time, aspire to run, run to inspire, and I'll see you again soon.